Again, so nice to see everybody. Have a seat. Cross the shins. Flex the feet. When you flex the feet, make sure the feet are under the knees. Press the thighs down. Lift the heart up. Lift the spine up. And remember, there's the front and back of the spine. The front of the spine, all the way up the length of the neck. Back of the spine, being supported, stabilized by your back muscles, not pushing you forward, but going up, and then let the sheath of muscle that attaches to the shoulder go wide and down, not force. Remove the tension in the grip. Work it in the legs more. Remember, if you've been in class the last few weeks, or you're watching this on YouTube, flex that thigh muscle, pull the kneecap towards the hip so that quad engages and you create that upper lift of the body. The lower abdominal picks you up. And then let your eyes close. Talked about before, recognizing past self and present moment to build future. And just even when you sit in your yoga poses, the first pose, just sitting here with the shins crossed and the feet flexed and swastikasana, you're working the thigh. Work the pose with the passion of an expert yogi who's done it 2 or 3 days a week, or more if you're Chaya, for the whole time we've been online. Practice your yoga poses in today's lesson. Give yourself permission to practice this work as if you've done it time after time, that you don't always have to take everything as if you didn't know, but give yourself the chance to feel the body of someone who's done the work, even if it's only once or twice a week. Just because you may come to the class and learn something new doesn't mean you're automatically starting over in every way. We approach it with the humbleness of a new student, but with the practicality of somebody who's done work. So when you flex your thighs, when you let your abdominals lift your spine, be receptive in that state, that you know if this works for you, you're doing it. And that you're on the steps towards that thing you want for tomorrow. That's right, buddy. Because when we get into the work, it can be easy to forget ourselves and only just get into the idea that what the teacher is giving us right now is the right answer, is the perfect way. That is not true. Each thing given to us by a teacher or by a book or piece of philosophy needs to be applied over and over and over and tested, and then done with the confidence of test, done with the confidence of trial and error and success. Owning that you've done that and working in that way creates a stability of your practice where the second guessing goes away. Oh, my back hurts. What should I do? Do yoga. Do those things you know that work. Instead of going to your teacher, teacher, what do I do? That's what the teacher is going to say. Do yoga. Do those things that work for you, that help build you to tomorrow. Because if today isn't working for you now, waiting for tomorrow to give you something different is floating down the river, getting swept into currents that might not be the way you want to be. Remember that in class too. The teachers may offer and say, but ultimately we're here for you to help you build your confidence, your strength, your endurance. So practice like you're an expert at you. Because I can promise you, I am not an expert in you. I'm not an expert in Chaya or Ryan or Pratima. I'm only an expert in Dustin. and not a very good one at that. So when you're doing your work, work on you like you want yourself to be, because you know what you're capable of. That past ideal of yourself encourages present self to get to future. Bring the palms together at the chest, thumbs touching the sternum. Even do this like an expert. That you've sat in this place and done it over and over, and feel that you've created that work. We'll shortly 3 times and begin. Oh. Shoulders away from your neck. Let that spine be lifted. Oh. If you're sitting there quietly at home, don't worry. It's like in the shower. No one else is going to hear you, but your sound vibration mixes across the world. Bow your head. Salute the essence of yoga inside yourself. Bring your hands into your lap. Let your head rise and your eyes open. Well, it's so nice to see some people snuck in after the seated oming part. Great. I'm always so glad. It's like those people that show up for the last 10 minutes. It's only restorative. And no, the last class online is not going to be an all restorative class either. Sorry, we're not going to like break the chain of work that we've done so well with. But work, let's do it. Grab your bolsters, lay them across your mat. If you don't have bolsters, use pillows, rolled up blankets, whatever you need. Take the bolster across your mat, take the top of both feet flat onto the bolster. So over the past few weeks, we worked on feeling the extension of the foot. We've been working on flexion of the foot, extension and flexion of the foot, and how that changes the thigh, gives the thigh ability to flex and stretch, gives the knee the ability to stabilize. And so you really start to find all these muscles in your foot that work, not just work, but also release. So when you sit back, just take that first moment to feel where the stretch is. When you sit back on the heels with the top of the feet flat on the bolster, feel how your feet lay on the bolster. Are they turned in? Are both heels rolled out? You need some support between your hips and heels so you can sit and feel it. And then don't just try to shift your body weight to try and compensate. Before you try to compensate, you add a little bit of flexion because maybe it's a muscle engagement, not just a body alignment. What's going on? So first, push all 10 toenails down into the bolster. So you have to flex through that foot and take those toenails, stretch the toes long and down. Dorsal flexion, right? We've done many times before. And then feel which of the toes press into the bolster the easiest. Pinky toe, ring toe, middle toe, first toe, big toe. Second toe, not first. And whichever one presses, start always at I like to start at the pinky. And when you press the pinky down, then you go to the ring toe. And if it doesn't press down, try. And then stay in that one. Kind of go through the toes from pinky to big toe, one at a time, trying to press them down. And do so, because what this does is it stretches that pinky toe side of the foot and flexes. So it stabilizes the most muscular part of your outer foot into your heel, into your ankle. And as you go through the middle 3, it makes the center arch of the foot shape, which helps the inner arch of your foot, plantar fascial connection and things like that. Also the muscles across the top of the foot and in between the bones. When you press the big toe bone down, you really get into that muscle that runs along the inner part of the foot, just on the across the top of the arch, the inner arch of the foot, the inner heel, ankle, and leg. Then flex your thighs. Pull your kneecaps towards your hips. Press your knees down into the floor slightly. Just try to get equal. Start slow. Just slowly find that power that lets you to press more and more and more. And then feel your feet. Is there still that same unevenness? Is one knee pushed down harder than the other? Are you tilting or leaning? Then you kind of start assessing. I'm extended and I'm flat. Am I tight somewhere that the work itself will release the imbalance? Or am I just not square on my own hips? So that's where the visual work comes in that we've worked on all this year. When you look at your body, are your knees even? Even if you kind of like feel the pressure of your heels on your glutes, do you need to move the flesh of the buttock out to the side? Poses don't just, well, I won't say that. Poses do a lot of amazing things for the body, but where they get multiplicative in their benefits is when we add our own awareness to it, when we really don't check out, but we check in deeper, asking those questions. Even if we don't get answers, the process of asking, experimenting builds a certain confidence in this. First, it starts with confidently saying, I don't know what's happening. And then you build up whatever it takes to ask it, someone else. And then confidence to kind of keep exploring after you've gotten guidance and advice. Because the one thing I know is that there's never enough information that someone outside of you can give you that's going to make you whole. I can't do it. Your work is what makes you whole in your yoga practice. Take your feet back, turn your toes under, knees on the bolster, sit back on the heels. Very happy puppy. When you sit back on the toes, your toes are in dorsal flexion where the toenails are bent back to the top of the foot. So now push the 5 toes, if you can, into the floor. I like to start again with the pinky toe side of the foot. And if your pinky toe doesn't reach the floor, stretch it for the floor like it's going to eventually get there and press down, not by rolling your feet out, but flexing those muscles on that outside of that foot so that pinky toe, which is bent like this, right, or it might be hanging while the other toes are bent back, it reaches for that floor that way. And then go to the ring toe, middle toe, second toe, big toe. Push those down. Then push your thighs together. Come up onto your knees off the heels. So your body is vertically upright above the hip and the knee, like we were going to do swinging gait or the like. Flex the thighs, push down through the outer knee because this pose shares one of the relationships of hero pose. All right, the sitting back, push down through the outer knee, squeeze the thigh together. And even here, push the toes down into the mat like your foot was going to try and straighten out. Toes stay turned under, but push them down. And then stretch the hips down while the knees stretch towards the bolster. Your hips stretch back towards your heels. So there's a separation of the action of those 2 points. So the quad pulls the knee towards the hip. The calf depresses the knee towards the back of the knee into the bolster. You're separating the front to back knee space. Yeah, right there, Katie. So thighs in, outer knee down, hips stretching back and down. And you sit here for a moment. Just feel it. Feel which foot, again, is engaging to the floor harder than the other. Which foot is easier to press down through the feet. For me, it's easy to push my right toes down, much harder for my left. My left is not as strong as my right, but I keep working it, trying to get them equal. Both hands on your bolster or on the blocks in front of you, as Tristan likes to use blocks to help her balance. Lift your knees up, straighten your legs, taking your heels to the floor, and slowly lift your hips into standing forward fold, Uttanasana. Keep your hands on the bolster or take your fingertips to the floor, whatever's most comfortable. It's not about how deep down you go in the stretch. It's continuing the footwork, the thigh to hip. But just be in a forward fold for a little bit. Take a look at your feet. Lift all 10 toes up. Notice there's the flexion and lift of the foot. Really dorsal flex those toes. You were just sitting back on them, stretching that. So now use that same muscle to flex those feet, lift them up, and then stretch, keep that flexed foot, but then stretch your toes towards your bolster and then down to the ground. So the arch, the foot is flexed and lifted, but the toes are trying to pull away from the heel. There you go. Bend your knees a little bit. Take the torque out of the knee for a second. Look at your knees, rotate them towards each other slightly. And if they're already centered, don't rotate past center, but look up the length of your thigh as far as you can see before close your body part gets in the way, and try to rotate the upper thigh. So you feel that upper quad flex, especially the upper part that connects into the glute. Remember when I said pull the kneecap up towards the hip? Pull the kneecap up, all the way up. Think about the muscle as you go up the leg, pulling it even higher. Take your feet about 6 to 8 inches apart. Lift the toes. Flex the foot, stretch the toes out and down, pushing the 5 toes down into the floor, but keeping that arch lifted. If you feel that foot collapse, the middle of the foot collapse, you've lost that flexed action. Now bend the knees slowly, letting your knees come forward, but don't lose the feet. Let the knees come forward. This makes the calf muscle flex. Let the hips come back. So as the knee elongates forward, just like when your knees were on the bolster, the hips stretch back. Don't let the heels come up, though. Only go low enough that your heels start to lift and pause there. You see, Tristan gets her knees at about a 90-degree bend, and then her feet stop her from going lower, which is okay, because if she were to go lower, it would manipulate her foot and ankle. It creates instability to try and stretch the hip. Instability of the foot to stretch the hip is an unstable hip, which is an unstable spine, which is an unstable soul. No teacher worth their shit ever said that. Please forget that. I'm going to delete this recording. Look at your feet. Is one foot turned out more than the other? Ask yourself to be even if it means your hips coming up, and really slowly build that stability in the root of your pose, right? I've talked about the asana of your pose is not just the full shape of it or the end game of it, but it is the closest part of yourself to the support, which is the earth. Let your knees go wider than your ribs. So you make that inner ankle open and lengthen. Getting tired yet? All right, straighten the legs, Uttanasana, but don't lose the feet. We're going to do that again here in just a moment, but the in and out is a little important for what I think might be happening in this group. When you bend the knees again, try to keep the kneecap pulling up towards the hip. Try to keep those upper quads flexed in that lifted action, because that lifted action is what frees up the groin and low back to sink, to drop into the garland, which is how your feet don't have to manipulate. Lift all 10 toes up, get that foot flex, stretch the toes out, press the 5 digits down. Again, slowly bend the knees, letting your knees go a little wide. But notice where the weight in your foot goes. When the knees stretch forward towards the toes and the hips push back towards the world behind you, notice where your body, can you keep it equal across the foot? Can you let your knees go wider? Good. Now, we're not going to stay here long, just enough to get warm. Look at your 10 toes. Are any of them doing cat mudra? Remember, cat mudra is where they crinkle. They're long and flat. No crinkle. Long and flat. Now, when you go back to Uttanasana, listen. Pay particular attention to how your legs unbend into Uttanasana by paying attention to the weight of your foot. Do you want to lean forward to stretch your leg? Do you want to lean back? Try to keep equal pressure and lift through the legs so the thigh muscles picking your kneecap and hips up higher. Bend down back to garland, bend the knees, take the wider, stretching the toes, pushing down. If you ever feel like a foot kind of rolls in or you see an ankle collapse in, lift all 10 toes, get the foot flexed, then stretch them and depress them. Feel that. Stretches your hips, works your back, works your quads, works your feet. Now, stretch both arms straight out in front of you, Uttanasana. Look up. Tuck your buttocks, but the thigh still pulls the knee towards the hip. Lift your spine up. Stand up all the way, Tadasana. Bring the arms down. Bring the feet back together, right to Tadasana, just for a moment. You can do footwork even from Tadasana. Thighs touching to start. Find your balance. Left foot's going to stay where it is. So for a moment, lift all 10 toes. Get the arch. Stretch the toes out. Keep the arch. Press the toes down. Keep the arch. Take your right foot back behind you about 2 feet. Take the top of your right foot flat to the floor. So your toes are flipped. There you go. You don't, very rarely can someone get all 10 toes or all 5 of the back foot toes onto the floor. It's very, so you've got this kind of Lord Naharaja variation. That left leg is long, and if you're standing here like this, with the leg slightly back behind you, pressing the top of the foot down, it's a balance issue. Chairs, walls, people that will stand there and let you hold on to them, all valid. Now, can you still work your toes like the top of the foot was on the bolster? Flex, stretch your toes long, stretch the top of your foot, stretch the top of your toes. Like your toes are trying to drag your foot back. And then when you've reached some engagement and length, press the 5 toenails down into the floor. Lift your left toes up, standing leg, lift your left toes up. Keep that arch, stretch those toes out and press down. So now you're doing both actions at the same time, but one on each foot, making your brain work a little bit. Slide the right foot next to the left foot, slide the left foot back. Stretch those left toes. Elongate the top of the left foot. So you feel like it's almost like your toes are dragging your shin, dragging your hip. Your left quad is still pulling the knee towards the hip socket. Stretch those back 5 toes. Stretch those 5 toenails to push down into the floor. Lift your right toes up. Stretch, keep the flexed arch. Stretch the toes long to press the toes flat without curling them. You're trying to press the length of bone of the toe. If you're like, this isn't so bad, Dustin, don't worry, it will be. There's time. Take the left toes out. Now, take your block. You're going to take one block on edge behind your right foot, about a foot back, about where your right foot was. We're going to start on edge. Now, if putting the top of your right foot on this block cramps you out, it's okay to go flat and build up to it. But from Tadasana, take the top of your right foot back onto the block behind you. I would like the leg straight. So the leg must go farther back. The leg must go farther back behind you and higher to be straight, and then to depress the top of the toes into that block. Unlock your left knees, flex your left knee up towards the hip. Then left toes, lift them up, keep the arch, stretch them out, depress all the bones down. Back foot, stretch the toes along the block, almost like the block's going to tilt a little bit. Tristan is actually starting to tilt her block, and that's okay. And then press those toenails down. Stretch the pinky toe especially to try and reach for that block. So the outer calf from your knee to your down your outer calf works. You want your outer calf muscles to stabilize your knee. You extend through that pinky toe and press that nail down. It also gives you this really sweet muscle line, that outer calf to shin. Looks very nice for some. Flex your right quad. Now, just to see if it works, can you, without bending your right knee, lift your right foot up off the block just even a tiny bit without losing the flex of the foot, the calf, and the thigh? That extension you're experimenting with starts to work your back muscles if you feel it. Trish. Trish says yes. All right, bring the right foot down. Step to your right half a step or move your block to the left. I don't care. Move one of the two parts of the world to make it work. Feet together, whatever is the fastest. You have limited time. Calf together, start into Tadasana, pick up your left leg, fling it, slide it, put it back behind you. When you get the top of the foot flat to the block, unlock your right knee, flex your right knee, pulling the kneecap up towards the thigh. So you feel all those thigh muscles that you use like in Uttanasana to help lift the hip for the forward fold. Now lift the upper body, the abdominis. Work your right foot, toes up, toes out, toes down. Keep those arch. Lift of the toes gets the arch, keep that arch. Extension of the toes keeps the top bones from taking pressure. Depression down creates extension and flexion. Back foot, you know what to do, especially that pinky toe side of that back foot. Stretch it and stretch that pinky toe down to press into the block and then to the second, into the ring, middle, second, and big toe. One side may be harder than the other if you have a history of rolling ankles, as Tristan does on her left. The point that you're sweating. Now, for a moment, keep all that work of that leg and just let it lift even the tiniest little bit. Right? And even though this is the first time you've done this pose, do it with the discipline of someone who's been here a lot, because you all have been. I see everyone on this list. You've been around me a lot. The people that are here are the loyal ones that are sticking it out. Take your left foot forward, step your left foot down. Not too bad. Pretty good. Fold forward, take both hands onto the floor, Uttanasana. When you go down, notice where your body weight goes. Did you keep the foot engaged and planted? Did you keep that base foundation of your pose stable as you folded into the pose? And the reason I ask that is that if you're going to create movement in your poses from one pose to the other, where you go from Tadasana to Uttanasana to whatever, the thing that keeps it from being just gymnastics, I think, in a sense, and makes it meditative is how much discipline and focus you're going to put onto you. Not just how hard you're working, you're sweating, or your watch telling you how many calories you burned or what the pollen count is, but how much work you put on into you that only you can feel, that's not readable by other stuff. Lift the toes, flex the arch, stretch the toes out, push the toes down. Now with the feet together, bend the knees, let the knees go a little wider, and sit your hips back into garland or malasana. And see what it takes to try and do the pose with the knees going wide and the inner foot ankle and all the outer foot ankle having to work like a madman to hold the widening thigh so the groin can't do it. Knee stretches forward. Actively let the knee lengthen towards the toes. Actively let the hips stretch back away from it while the thigh flexes. Stretch both arms out. Work the foot. Look up. Uttanasana, flex the glutes, tuck the buttock. And when I mean tuck the buttock, don't just round your lower back by pinching your groin and inner thigh. Flex the outer buttock and pull the outer buttock down. Then pick your chest up. If you want your chest to come up, something must go down to give to the earth. So pull your butt down, lift your heart. Stand all the way up, Uttanasana, Tadasana. Bring the arms down. Stand wide on your yoga mat. Standing wide on your yoga mat. Osade Podatanasana, standing straddle. Or Devista. Look at your feet. Make sure they're both pointing ahead. Start there. Place your hands on your hips. Lift your spine up. Flex the kneecap up towards the hip socket. Now, pivot on your heels. Carefully turn both toes out at about a 45-degree angle. When you do this, before you go down into the pose, this is part of the stabilizing action that makes your inner arch and ankle lift. Push your hands down into your hips, lift your spine up. Lift all 10 toes up for a brief moment so the arch lifts, and feel how the inner ankle muscles that run up between the inner ankle and the shin have to flex and lift when you lift all 10 toes up into the air. Keep that flex. Notice your knee wants to bend to do this because your ankles are tight. Stretch the thigh long, or as Mr. Angar would say, stretch your knee long, which I think often led to the people locking their knees. So stretch your knee long up by using the thigh to pull the muscle up, pull the knee up, because your calf is working to keep your foot there. Lift your toes, stretch your toes out, push the toe bones down, but don't lose that inner ankle and that inner thigh. Feel that flex of that leg. Fold forward with the hands on the hips, take both hands onto the floor. Then, once you're there, can you keep that flex of the arch and the ankle? Look at those things. Pick one to look at that looks the best to you. See if you can keep it, because we're going to do this a few times. Pivot on both heels, keeping your hands on the floor, and try to keep that flexed inner ankle arch, keep this powerful foot. Turn your toes in like they're going to point at your wrists almost. And then stretch the toes out and down. Lengthen the whole foot away from the heel and the toes, and then plant the toes into the floor. Not dig them, right? No cat mudra, flat mudra. How's that feel? So you begin to reshape that arch. You start to ask your arch to stay out of the collapsed state on any standing action. Take your hands on your hips. Bring your spine up. Exhale as you go. Good. You're more powerful lift when your feet are engaged. Turn your toes back out 45 degrees. Only pivoting on the heel. Don't do this by pressing down and spinning your heels. Press down through your heels and spin your foot. That's making the ankle take the twist. Make the thigh take the twist instead of jiving on your ankle. Toes up. Feel that arch flex. Stretch the bones out and down again. Spine up, head up, chest up. Lengthen. Remember lifting the spine. Pull the thigh, knee up towards the hip. Let the abdominals lift the spine. Fold forward, taking both hands to the floor. Keep the feet. Then look at your feet. Pick the one that you didn't look at this time. If you looked at your right foot to keep it, now look at your left one. Don't lift your toes up. Keep them stretching out and reaching. Pick the whole foot up from the weight shifting towards your heel, and then turn the toes in again towards your wrist. Stretch those toes and reach for the floor with the toes, even though the foot is rotating. So the whole foot is a stabilizing platform, even though it may not have the earth to press into. That flexion is an important thing to remember, because even in our seated poses, right, like the big seated 5 or 6 for pranayama, you got to keep that foot action, even though it's not the same as what you're learning in your standing pose. What you're learning is the muscular engagement, not just the right shape for this pose, but it might be the right thing for lots of people. A few deep breaths. Stretch those toes out, press those toes down. Notice which ones do not like to. Notice which leg had quit working, which knee is hanging downward. And then how much do you want to do from your back to try and make your foot and leg work? Let your low back go. Remember what I've said in past weeks. If there's tension somewhere that you're creating, you're the one responsible for resolving, not by just forcing it to let go. But try resolving it by going, well, I just don't need to do this. The tongue's on the roof of your mouth. Are you gripping in your fingers, hands, hips, head, neck? can you let your pose be something more than just how hard you're working to justify the good things you get out of it? You do not need to justify that to me or to the yoga practice. You deserve the good things you get out of it. From my standpoint, flex your left thigh, Katie. Pull your left pelvis up more. I'll walk your hands to the left about 2 inches. That's centered. All right, hands on your hips. Lift your spine up. I'm going to do it one more time. Step a little wider. Go slightly outside your comfort zone. Turn the toes out at 45. Use whatever support you need to safely explore, right? Even if it's scary, doesn't mean it's wrong. Hands on the hips, lift the spine, lift all 10 toes, stretch them out, press them down. Feel the difference now that you're wider. Stretch them out and down, spine up, head up. Lift all the spine from the base to the top. Fold forward, take both hands, take the upper body down into the fold, folding at the hips, taking both hands onto the floor. Then keep that foot, look at your feet, check them both out. Can you keep that inner arch to inner ankle to inner foot all lifting, pivot on the heel only and turn them in while the toes are still reaching, extending, and flexing. And then take a moment and turn them in slightly more. Now, can you rotate your femur bones in the same way? Go look at your knees, pull the kneecap up, and rotate your thigh in to try and match. And then hold the pose. Because we're going to go a little higher now. If you look at your feet, your toes are going to tell you a little bit about your hip. If your toes are level and depressed, more or less, your hip's probably widening and lifting correct. If some of your toes are not leveled and pressed, that hip is probably not engaging fully. Do not try to dig your nails in, but lengthen the bones of the toe to stretch down, even though the arch of the foot lifts. Take your hands, stay in the forward fold. This can be challenging, but your upper body may lift a little bit. But take your both hands and place them on your quads. And you can use your hands pushing into your thighs a little bit for stability. But this is very tough footwork, thigh work. Feel your quads with your palms flat on your front thighs. Which thigh is working harder? Ask the one that is not working as hard to work equal to the one working hardest, and then back off the harder one to match the not working one. Give yourself the feeling of balance and then let your spine hang while your hands keep that guided action. Woo! Sweating now. Sweating to the oldies. I don't got a good joke for this. We're moving on. Take your hands higher up to the hip crease. You can stick your thumbs right in the crease of the hip and feel which crease is deeper. The deeper crease is the more active one. So ask the not active one to crease deeper. And then look at your feet, how your feet want to change or might feel when you get that deeper crease. So you start to develop a relationship. Where's my feet? Where are my hips? Standing poses can be amazing amounts of footwork if you really start breaking down the stability of it and how it can make you feel safer to move your hips back and spine. It's true in our seated poses. It's more true in our standing poses. And it's true in your backward bends and even in your inversions. There will probably be a time in the coming days at the studio where we do the inverted foot class. Tristan's like, oh God. Bring your body up, exhale as you go. Grab a yoga block and have a seat on the yoga block. Good, Katie. Move that left hip as well. Sitting on the yoga block, Baddha Konasana, feet together, knees wide. Use your hands to pull your legs into place. So as you pull these feet in, again, remember I've talked about if you're really mobile, the feet roll open easy. You've got to press the big toe in. Start using your feet to kind of guide what's really happening in your hips. I'm very mobile. I can roll my foot open like a book and my knees drop. So that means I can manipulate my ankle and arch, sure. But if I push my big toes together, my knees don't drop as easy. My groin or my back doesn't allow that rotation. So when I get deep foot cramps. So what you're really learning is, can you stabilize hypermobility, right? Where your foot just rolls open and you're super passive and it looks all pretty, right? You see me do? Versus, I'm so tight that I can't roll it open at all. So take a finger, place it between your big toe pads and press it and feel which foot's working more than the other. Because if one is working more than the other, there's probably something going on in that hip that's not allowing stabilization of the spine to lift. You don't get to pranayama without stable, at least in our tradition of Iyengar Hatha yoga. They ask us to be aware of our stability so that when we're breathing, we're not getting false readings, right? That's why he made props to get you stable so then you could have true readings of what that is. Push those big toes together. Push those heels together. Flex the thighs. Pull the knee towards the hip. And the more you work the thigh, pulling the knee towards the hip while you press the big toe bones together, there's your openness of the hip joint. Keep the thigh flexed. Now you add mobility of the foot. Keep the quad, keep that arch. Take your hands to the inside part of the foot and roll it open as best you can while keeping the thigh, while keeping the arch of the foot. Take your hands in there and just peel. So you have some resistance, because now what you're trying to do is take flexion and add extension, or rotation in this case, to stretch that out. Just zoom real good. Quads are flexed, the knees are dropping. Even if you're leaning forward slightly to do this, where you're keeping that arch flexed and then peeling the foot open, what you get is a backside of the hip movement, which allows your spine, right? Like I said, do this for, if you can hold that action for 3 minutes, take your hands back behind you, keep the foot open and flexed, the thighs, quads engaged, lift the spine up, high as you can, feel that back release. If you relax your low back, you get the release. Engage the abdominals. Right, say engage the abdominals. That just doesn't mean suck it in. Feel the laterals. Right? The whole body is lifted by it. And then take the arms out and try to keep the abdominals, keep the back release, keep the feet, keep the thigh. And now, like, hold and find enlightenment, right? Shaking because you're feeling it. All right. Now, bring the feet back together. Keep the quad flexed. You're going to take your right hand, grab a hold of your right ankle in the front of the foot, right where the bend is. Don't grab the top of the foot. Grab right where the shin meets the ankle. Pick the foot up slightly into the air. Take your left hand, grab the heel of the foot, and turn the toes down towards the floor while flexing the foot. You're looking kind of like that. Where your toes are on the floor, your heel is up in the air, and you can push the heel away from the groin. Now, even here, hold the foot with the hand, whatever degree. What toes press easiest into the floor? Pinky will first. So push the pinky toe down harder. Ring toe, middle toe, second toe, big toe. Flex the quad, pull the knee towards the hip, So it's almost like you're trying to straighten the leg out, right? Push your foot down to the floor, almost like you're just going to stand up on that. You're not going to, but you might get a hamstring to glute cramp. The first time I had it, I flipped out of that pose so fast. Push all 5 toes down, flex the quad to pull the knee up, then push the foot hard into the floor like your leg's just trying to straighten. Woo! Strong foot. And then if you really want to be a cramp in your calf, flex your calf muscle and stretch the, how do I say this? Let me get my head around. Pull the calf muscle up towards the back side of the knee. So your knee, the back of your knee goes away from you while your kneecap, the thigh pulls the knee front to the hip. Calf out, thigh back. I can give myself a calf cramp in my right calf that just about blows me. Like a tire blows out. Let the right foot go. Left hand grabs left ankle arch area or top of foot, right where the shin meets the foot. Pick it up a little, flex the foot. Use the right hand on the heel to lift it and help it rotate down. Feel the toes on the floor. Press the pinky toe, ring, middle, second, big toe down. Flex your quad, pull the knee towards the hip so you're lengthening, you're stabilizing the pelvis. Try to straighten the leg out by push, like it's the same muscles that you would use to straighten the leg. You use to push the foot into the floor to help lift your spine up. Which toes don't want to press into the floor, press them more. And then engage your calf to stretch towards your knee at the same time. Woo! All right. It's a lot. Pushing. This is really nice. Cramp that.
I'm trying. That's all they can do. All I can do.
Should do more every time I touch. All right, take the foot out. Take a moment and grab a chair or a stool of some kind. You're going to work a little more advanced version of that pose before we end class. So if you're editing this, whoever's editing this video, feel free to cut out this downtime. You could put that little thing they used to do in theaters with like intermission, like to get a snack or a popcorn. Put the link for the, where to buy your yoga props from the studio. That's your free yoga business lesson for everybody. Have your yoga seat, open your chair up on your mat. Have a seat on your chair or your stool. Watch Dustin for a moment and talk her through this. So the full action of rotating the feet like that in Baddha, you traditionally Baddha Konasana, if my hands were my feet in this, like this, right? The toes are pointing away from the body. There's another version where they turn back in towards the body and you're sitting on the other side of your heels. This is very, very hard to do. But the way we start to train this is from using the chair to drop into it. It is very useful as a pose, though, to teach us to engage the lifted action of the thigh to our hip and lower back. I found. So here's what you're going to do. I'm going to try and angle the camera down. So bring the feet together. And then you're going to let the knees go out wide. You're on the very front edge of your chair. This is not a pose where you sit way back and get comfy. This isn't moving. Bring the feet to Baddha. And then pick the feet up the heels come close and your toes go out wide. So you're in foot where the toes are back. And just like the last bit, try to touch. Notice what part of the heel touches. It's usually the inner heel to the big toe. These press together. Push your pinky toe joints together hard. Push your outer heel hard. This is one of the rare times where pushing your outer heel or pinky toe together is going to be difficult because this is not a normal shape. Now, push the pinky toe, ring toe, middle toe, second toe, big toe down. Flex the quad, pull the knee towards the hip. Flex your, same thing you just did, push your calf towards your knee. Ready for the fun part? Slide forward slightly, using your arms on your prop, and slowly start to drop your hips down towards your heels. And you may not go far, that's okay. But even as you slowly start to descend down, check your feet. Use your arms to support you. Now push your feet into the floor like your legs are just going to stand you up like this. And get all that deep hip pelvic thigh work. All right, Katie. Push your back off your right and work your left. Back off your right. So your right heel needs to go this way. There you go. And then you practice this part. Can you roll your heels away from you any degree? Sometime in class together, we'll work with partners where the partner grabs it and gently rolls it. But for now, even this action where you're descending the hips towards that heel is going to open up the thigh, inner groin, flex the quad, calf, push the toes down, push through the legs. Exhale, come back up. That'll get your heart pumping, huh? Or break a toe. You won't break a toe. Lay on your backs, put your legs up on something, stool, wall, chair, couch. Have a waterfall pose for a moment. Lay back, friends. The eyes closed, tongue away from the roof of the mouth. I asked you at the beginning to practice these things as if you had practiced them all year. Or that practice this like a person that has been here, who showed up. However much you showed up is here. Sure, there's that part of us that says, well, we could have always done more, right? That's true. But that person doesn't exist. The person that could have done more is gone. The person that did what they did is here. So don't try to practice like the person who should have done more came in and did it. Practice like someone that's given themselves that time. Because when you show up to your class like that, the good teachers acknowledge your work, teach you where you are. You don't hide the work you've done. But you be open to maybe it wasn't just the right exact combination for you, right? Like I've said, there's no perfect formula for this. If I had the perfect formula, I would have already packaged it and be on the shelves at HEB. But let yourself be seen. Let your work be seen. Let your challenges be seen. Let your successes be seen, because I cannot tell you as a teacher how much I've gotten from this by seeing people show up and tell, here's my hurt, here's the success. Even if the success is, I've just been brave enough to ask for help. Or here's the success of, I've been doing this for 10 years and it's close, but I need that last little bit. Awesome. Because I, as a teacher, am not interested in pretzels or perfect poses. As I've always said, If I do my job well at the end of my life, I will have no students to mourn my passing. I will only leave behind me capable, healthy practitioners of yoga who are in their own rights teachers of a better world, an honest one. No one hides because there's nothing worth hiding. So even as you lay here, my friends, rest like someone that's done their work, because you have. You showed up, you got it. Don't worry about the next thing to do or the thing that needs to be done, because that's for future you. Present you's being encouraged, uplifted, empowered by past you to create future self that can handle everything else. All parts integrated, all parts in one. Just as your breath, your body, your intellect, your koshas, right, are your sheets of self are in alignment. So is the past, your present, to your potential future. So rest, my friends, for a few moments. Fully in your own power and self. And enjoy the fruits of your yogic practice. Slowly increase the depths of your breathing. Bend the knees to the body, roll to your side. Take a nice deep breath in. Exhale, press your palms to the floor. Slowly up you come. Till we meet again. Namaste.